During this component of the FX9860 G2 overview, we will be focusing primarily on the Run Matrix icon. If you are new to Casio, when you first turn on your calculator, you should see a main menu that has a number of icons, and eventually we'll be showcasing all of them, but we want to focus on that first one, Run Matrix, today. The way you access it, you have a couple options. You can use the arrows to move the cursor around, and when you highlight it you can press execute, or this little number at the bottom right is a shortcut key, so in the case of Run Matrix we can just press the number 1 to open that up. We will assume that you're unfamiliar with the Casio menu system, so we'll take a quick look at that. The menu across the bottom here we call a soft menu, and you'll notice that each of the options aligns with a function key right below it. Therefore, if you want to access that menu, you just press the function key. If I were to do some sort of a division problem, we get our result. It is possible to toggle these results back and forth from decimal to fraction by using the form to decimal key. That's somewhat handy if you've never seen that before. You can also use this key here to generate fractions. If I tap that, we get a nice two-dimensional template. So I can enter, let's say 5/2. Actually, let me change that. I'm going to make it 5/25. And when I press execute, you'll see that it simplifies that fraction for me. This is a feature of the setup. You can actually have it not do that, although most of the time we think you'd like that. And then when you get that result of 1/5, if you would like to know what the decimal approximation is, or in this case the exact decimal, you can again press F to D to toggle from decimal to the standard form. Most everything else you're going to recognize on this keyboard is pretty standard from other calculators you've probably seen before. But what I really want to focus on is these soft menus today. Now that I have a bunch of information on the screen, if I want to clear it, you can use delete here, F2 to delete a line, or delete all. I'll choose delete all, and F1 for yes. This F3 option is the matrix menu. You may wish to take a look at that. This is certainly not a bad place to store or to edit your matrices. It's not my favorite method of using them, but it depends on how long you'll be using a matrix. If you intend to put some data in or some information into a matrix and you keep reusing it, this is not a bad way to go. Once you get into a menu like this, in order to get back out of it, that's another important thing you're going to need to know, and for that we're going to use the exit key. So just pressing exit will back up to the initial menu we had. The next menu option is math, and that's the one that is one of my favorites. This is our two-dimensional math templates, so pressing that gets me access to matrix templates, log of any base, absolute value, some derivatives, integrals, and summation. Taking a look at matrices first, we have some really nice predefined matrices, some 2x2 and 3x3 squares. You can define your own particular dimensions or put in some vectors. Here's some more vectors. I'm going to go ahead with a 2x2 just to demonstrate. I'll put some numbers in here without any particular rhyme or reason. And if I press execute, it will simply store it or evaluate it, but there's really nothing much to do there. What I kind of like to do, I'll back up a little bit, and I'll move the cursor to the left hand side here. What I like to do is store this into a variable, and this arrow right above the AC on key is a great way to store your values. You can normally store numbers into these letters like A, B, C. You'll notice they're in like a dark orange or a reddish color. You can store numbers in there, but you can't store matrices or lists into these letters. If you want to store a matrix or a list or even a vector, there's a bit of a technique you need to learn. In this case, I'm going to store this matrix into matrix location A. And to do that, there's again some options. Probably the easiest in our current configuration is right above the number 2, you'll notice in yellow, mat, which stands for matrix. I'll call that a keyword because that's the keyword that's important in order to let the calculator know you're dealing with matrices. So shift matrix, and then I can name the matrix, for in this case matrix A. Now, not a lot has changed, but now I can do computations with that matrix. If I want an inverse of that matrix, I can type in matrix A. Actually, yeah, I think that's right. Alpha A. I missed that key. And where is our inverse? I suppose I can just do that. Raise to the -1. And there we have our inverse matrix. That's somewhat handy. Additionally, there are some really nice features in this option menu, which I'll come back to in a few minutes. But for now, I want to back out of this menu by pressing exit. And I want to quickly show you the log of any base. So if I press that, it gives me a nice two-dimensional template again. Let's say I want the log base 4 of 8. In order to move between these empty spots, these positions in the template, you just use the right arrow is the easiest way. It's just like the tab key on your computer, where if you're filling out a form, it'll go from empty slot to empty slot in the exact correct order. We also have derivatives, and as I was saying, integrals. We'll take a look at those in a minute because there's another way we can get to the same items as well as summation. I'll pull up summation really quick. So there should be not a whole lot of surprises to this. If you're familiar with summation, I'll just put in the information we might need. You'll notice again moving right to move through all the various locations. So the summation of x squared is x varies from 1 to 10, and there you have it. Pressing exit again, we'll back up a level. Now I really want to show you the option menu. These are great. Matrix is somewhat useful. Two-dimensional templates are very nice. There's a small menu there, but option has everything. So if you haven't seen it yet and you think a calculator probably has it, it's probably in the option menu. Before I go any further, I think I'm going to back out of here and use delete all, just again to clear the screen. And then again I'll pull up option. Now once we're in option, I'm going to start by looking at the list menu. We have the list keyword right here, so if you want to refer to list 1, list 2, list 3, etc., you're going to need that. So I can just press that, and list 1 refers to list 1. Because I've not entered anything, it's going to give me a dimension error, but that's how you would reference it. This will convert from a list to a matrix. The dimension of a list, fill a list with a set value. This is a really nice one for generating a list. The sequence command, I'll show you that. And let's say we want to generate a sequence in the form of x squared. That'll be sort of our pattern, our formula for generating sequence terms. And then I'll use the comma right here. The sequence will have its variable be x, as x varies from 1 to 10, let's say. Very similar to what we just did with the sum. And you have to tell it what to increment by. It always wants to know. It doesn't want to assume. So if I count by ones, close parentheses, we get 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, all the way up to 10 squared. Now, that's been evaluated as a list there, but I haven't stored it. So if I want to press the store, it'll grab the list answer from the previous line, and I can store that into list 1 using this keyword, list 1. Execute. So all that is now stored in list 1. It's really a little different perhaps, but important that you recognize the importance of these keywords. So not only if I want to refer to matrix A, I need to use mat A, or list 1, I need the keyword list in front of the number 1. The same is true of vectors if you're using those. But if I want the answer from a previous line, it needs to say list answer or matrix answer if it is a list or a matrix. Otherwise the calculator will be looking for a numeric value and be confused. Now that I have list 1, I can compute the dimension of list 1. And we put 10 values in, so the length of that's 10. You'll notice right here above F6 we have an open arrow that indicates there are more menu options. So pressing F6 will give you more options to find the minimum or the maximum value in a list, etc. And F6 again, I can sum all the values in that list. Sum list 1. Now because list keyword is no longer on the screen, I'm going to use Shift and the number 1 down here to pull up the keyword from above the number 1. And this should look familiar because it's the exact same pattern we summed earlier. Pressing exit once again gets you out of a menu. If you're ever in a menu you don't want to be in, just keep hitting exit. We have our matrix computations that we can use. If I press F2, again the matrix keyword is here or down above the number 2. We can convert a matrix to a list. We can compute the determinant of the matrix. And since earlier we stored some numbers into matrix A, I can now compute the determinant of that matrix. Or the transpose, or I can augment it. We have an identity matrix, the dimensions of a matrix, fill that matrix, row echelon form or reduced row echelon form of matrix A. If you need to use it, you'll know what it is, and if you're not sure what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. It will come later. The key thing for those who know what reduced row echelon form is that we get an identity because this is linearly independent. So here's my vectors, dot product, cross product. If you're working with vectors, I'll leave that to you. Now that we're done, I want to back out again by pressing exit. Let's take a quick look at the complex menu. 3 plus, let's say 4i. We'll notice there's an I here, or you can use I right above the number 0. I can multiply that. It'll pull up the previous answer by, let's say, 3 minus 4i. And so we have it. You can grab the argument from a complex value. You can compute the conjugate. If we go to more options, we've got the real part or the imaginary part. It will just peel off the 3 or the 4. You can convert a complex number in A plus BI format to polar, or from polar back to A plus BI format. Let's do that really quick. I'll put it in parentheses to make sure that I'm getting what I expect. Because I don't have I on the screen, I'm going to use the I right above the number 0 by pressing Shift 0 and then convert that to R and theta. Execute. So our radius is 5 and there's our theta in terms of radians. If I press this key, it will automatically grab the answer from the previous line and try converting that back to A plus BI form. For more options, we move over here and we're back around to the initial menu we were looking at. We'll again hit exit to back up. Take a quick look at the calculate menu. Let's take a look at derivatives. So if I want the derivative of, let's say, 3x squared, move to the right at the location where x is equal to 4, and there we have it. If I want to integrate, again, let's say 3x squared. If I press right, it will give me, so this is 3x squared from what value? Let's say 0. Right to 3. Execute. Once again, I hope you notice that by pressing the right arrow, it sort of tabs through all the locations in the template that need to be completed. For some more options, we've got a function minimum, a function maximum, the sigma as we used before, log of any base. Once again, they're in here, although they're also in the other template location. Integer division, that could be handy if you want to do division with remainder. Here's the remainder and some simplification. Pressing exit, let's go on to the, let's see, statistics. We're going to actually ignore statistics. You can do some statistics here. Just take a quick look. You have distributions at your disposal, compute standard deviation and variance. However, I think I would recommend most of the time you do your statistics in the statistics mode, which is option 2 on the main icon menu, and we'll take a look at that in a subsequent session. Pressing F6 for some more options. We've got the conversion menu. This is really nice. Let's say I want to convert 5 millimeters into feet. I don't know why I would want to, but just to demonstrate, we start off with the number 5, and now we need to find millimeters. So that's a unit of length. I'll press F2. Here's millimeters is the number 4. And this shaded arrow, this dark black arrow, represents the conversion to some other form. Again, I'll go to length. You'll notice we have some metric forms here, but I'm not seeing feet. So to get to the other tab here, I'll press right, and there's feet, number 3, or I can move down and press execute. So 5 millimeters converted to feet, press execute again, and there you have 0.0164 feet. We also have area, volume, time conversions, temperature, velocity, mass, force, pressure, energy, and power, and back around. Exit again. I'm going to skip over the hyperbolic trig functions. I'll take a quick look at probability. So we have factorial, just the simple 8 factorial, execute. One of the features I think is really nice is that you'll notice the factorial option stays on the screen, so you don't have to dig through a bunch of menus to get a factorial. And if I want to do more factorial problems, keep digging back and back and back and back. Now it's here for a lot of quick computation. We also have permutations and combinations, so if I want to take 5 items, take in 2 at a time. If order matters, I use P. If it does not matter, I use C. You notice you just start with your number, then press that option, and then how many you're taking at a time. We have random numbers at your disposal. Strictly random numbers is F1 here. Just pressing execute, you'll notice you get a number of any number from 0 to 1, some decimal. We have random integers. You can pick a random integer from 2 to 10, for instance. You can set your own boundaries to that. No reason I picked 2 to 10. If you want to do like rolling a die or a number cube, you can pick from 1 to 6. In fact, if I go from 1 to 6 and I want to roll it several times, I can even say give me 4 results, for instance. And it will give me a list of values that I rolled. We have random normal and binary values that follow those distributions. And you can even generate a list of these random numbers just by this command right here. So that would be a list of numbers between 0 and 1. Exiting again, see what else we have. I'm going to skip over those for now. Exit. Numeric calculations, things like absolute value, truncating an integer, a fractional part, greatest integer, let's see, GCD, LCM, modular arithmetic, all accessible here. Exiting again, we have some angle calculations, forcing angles to be in degrees, radians, gradients, etc. Conversion to polar and rectangular form. Oops, I backed up a little too much. Back into my option menu, more. We have engineering symbols. So that would be milli, micro, nano, pico, femto. So all these do is if I pick a number and I say let's make that if that's nanometers, then it's 5 times 10 to the negative 9th meters. It just represents it in that scientific format for you. Pressing for more gives us the larger versions like kilo, mega, giga, tera, peta, exa. And then these keys, the engineering key and the sort of reverse arrow engineering key, all it does is it changes. There you go. You'll notice this previous value. It's 5, what was it? It was 5 times 10 to the negative 9th is the same thing as 5,000 times 10 to the negative 12th. or 5 million times 10 to the negative 15th. All it's doing is changing the representation, but it's the exact same value. It's just a different way of looking at it. So you can increase or decrease using that. And back around. We have time, value, and money, a lot of financial computations, simple interest, compound interest, etc. If you need financial computations, you'll probably be more likely to recognize those. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that at the moment, since we have a special mode that you can go into to do those computations. It's probably a little easier. We have some logical operators. Again, I'm not going to spend time on those. And we're back around to the start of that option menu. So I think that's going to conclude our first look. We will clear up the screen here, delete all, and I'll press menu if you want to get back to that icon menu, and on our next video we'll be taking a look at the statistics icon.